Prepare to experience the strongest radio allowable by law. Secrets will be revealed. Myths dispelled. From the studio gym where excuses never apply, it's Superhuman Radio with your host, Carl Lenore. Hey, welcome back to another episode of Supreme Radio. Today is Tuesday, which means it's the Blueprint Power Hour with my co-host, Coach Rob Regish. He'll be joining me in a minute. Later in the show, we're going to have Cameron George on. We did a show about KAVA not too long ago with him. The guy's brilliant. And we're doing another show about KAVA because there is some concerns about KAVA being toxic to the liver. And some KAVA is. And that's why you have to know your sources. We're going to talk about that a little bit later in the show, so you'll want to stick around for that. Of course, we have to thank our title sponsor, and that's Legendary Foods, makers of the amazing Tasty Pastry. If you haven't tried it, I don't know where you live, how you can get by it. It's the fastest growing healthy snack in the world. And once you start eating Tasty Pastries, you'll never eat another protein bar again. I promise you that, because unlike protein bars, the Tasty Pastry actually tastes like real cake pastry. You won't eat it just because it fits your macros. You'll eat it because it's delicious, and your kids will eat them too. So be prepared to share. You can't get a kid to eat a protein bar, but you'll have to wrestle the Tasty Pastries out of their hands. Go to shrnetwork.biz/legendary. Use the code SHR10. Check out all the flavors. They're amazing. Really, the single best healthy snack in the world today. And without further delay, I will get Rob's music going here.
Calling all Blueprint Army. Fall in line. It's time for the Blueprint Power Hour with Coach Rob Regish on the Superhuman Radio Network.
Hey, welcome back. How you doing, Rob?
Well, I sit here today, I guess, a changed man, because I have a new appreciation for those people that get severe muscle cramps. Oh, holy smokes, talk about debilitating.
Yeah.
So, and I might not be out of the woods yet, but my wife has had these. A lot of women I know have them when they lay down to sleep at night. And if it wasn't for, I think, magnesium and maybe one or two other things, I wouldn't be able to sit in this position. I mean, literally up until an hour or so before the show, I wasn't able to sit like this without excruciating pain.
I very rarely get cramps. But then again, I do consume lots of sodium, lots of potassium, lots of magnesium. I get my magnesium from Bioptimizers. I take it twice a day, before bed and once in the afternoon. And Magnesium Breakthrough has like 8 different types of magnesium in it. It's 400 milligrams a serving. And I think it's the best magnesium in the world, personally. And it has all the, people are always arguing about which magnesium is better for this and which magnesium is better than that. You don't need to make that decision. You just take Mag Breakthrough and you get them all. So.
Well, I think there's a lot to be said for getting them all, and I'll tell you why. I came home from that episode and downed a ton of citrate, and I've been using citrate and aspirate and I think glycinate up until that hour before the show that I just mentioned, and I took some magnesium with orotate in it. So to the extent that you can get, and I think that's what is honestly making a big difference. To the extent that you can get
We're having some internet connectivity issues, Rob. Can you hear me? Rob?
Yeah,
We
you're cutting in and out.
yeah, it's the internet on your end. I'm watching it go up and down. But that's okay. We're good. We're good. So but the cramp's gone now, right?
Mostly,
Oh,
not
you still feel
entirely.
it. You still feel it a little bit, huh?
Yeah. When it was at its worst, only two positions that I could maintain without a lot of pain, and that was laying flat down on the couch and sitting way back in the chair. And obviously, those aren't conducive to being productive. So, yeah,
When's the
debilitating is
last
the
time you
word. No
checked your
question
blood
about
sugar?
it.
When's the last time you checked your blood sugar? Can you hear me, Rob? Oh, we're not going to have this all day, are we? Great. Rob, let me know if you can hear me. I don't want to have to take an early break just to get you to restart your browser. Rob, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Yeah, your internet is going in and out. We're going to have to try. Maybe during the first commercial break, you can, you don't have to restart your computer, but maybe just log off and log back on again.
Okay, I'll try that. Yeah.
Okay, so when's the last time you checked your blood sugar?
Oh, I had full blood work about a month ago.
Do you remember what your fasting glucose was?
Low to mid 90s, which was lower than it normally is.
Really? So your blood sugar, fasted blood sugar, is usually in the 90s and above?
Yeah, and that's consistent with my family's genetics. So for some reason, um, that's the case. Now I had an A1C run after one of those fasting blood sugar numbers came back higher than I would have liked. And I forget the specific score, but the doctor said, you don't have a problem with blood sugar according to this anyway.
A1C has been, all forward leaning doctors today have discounted A1C completely because
Really,
the
I would
idea,
have.
well, the idea that a red blood cell lasts exactly 90 days is complete bullshit. And in people who are metabolically challenged or have a predisposition um, to uh, running high blood sugar, there's evidence that higher insulin may make red blood cells turn over faster. So let's say your red blood cells only last in 2 months instead of 3, and you're a 5.5. If it was allowed to go out to 3, you may end up being a 7.5. I mean, so it's not a good. It's not glucagon is a better test with blood sugar, but doctors don't want to test for it. But here's why I'm asking you this. Sometimes one of the earliest signs that you're becoming insulin resistant is, in fact, cramps. Insulin has a profound effect on um, electrolytes, intracellular electrolytes. And so, as your blood sugar starts to rise and insulin production starts to rise, you start to have imbalances between calcium channels and magnesium and sodium that precipitates as cramps. So I would say to you that you need to look at modalities and ways to get your blood sugar down. And I don't know what that is. I don't know, how often you eat, what you eat, or anything like that. But you really should look at it.
It's a mix of intermittent fasting. It is not true, ketogenic, if you will, but it's lower carbohydrate. In some cases, post workout, if I'm going to eat carbohydrates, I'll try to get the majority of them then. But yeah, I mean, it's absolutely something I think everybody needs to stay on top of, and you know, even
Buy
though I,
yourself, buy yourself, buy yourself a glucometer at Walgreens.
yep,
Get the cheapest one you can. It's like $20. It comes with 10 test strips and 10 lancets. And check your blood sugar 3 days in a row. And then add that together and divide by 3, and that's your average blood sugar. And if it's up in the 90s, you should be vigilant.
so in the absence of, let's say, A1C test,
Mhm.
are they looking just at fasting blood sugar to
No,
determine it?
more forward-leaning doctors are looking at something called C-peptide or actually insulin
Yeah,
and blood sugar. So having high blood sugar or even normal blood sugar is meaningless if you don't know how much insulin your body is pumping out to keep it in that range.
Right.
So theoretically, you could have blood sugar in the 70s and 80s, but it's only because your pancreas is running at 80% duty.
Yeah.
And eventually it's going to run out of steam and you're going to be full-blown diabetic. So if you want to do something, triangulate your own blood sugar at home. If it continues to be up in those 90s, then I would go to the doctor and ask for, a blood sugar and insulin test side by side while fasted, and see just how much insulin you're making to get it into the 90s early in the morning.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I'll do that.
Yeah, because that, like I said, one of the earliest signs of insulin resistance is cramping, because insulin modulates how electrolytes function. So just check it out.
Good info.
Okay, let's go right to the first question. Hold on a second. And please post your questions. We will get to all of them as quickly as we can. So this one comes from Perry Jansen. He says, love the show and what you do, you and Carl do, about the 5-minute solution last week of those of us with analysis paralysis. Can you give me a more detailed example for someone who's already strong?
Yeah, and I think it's a great time to put a finer point on it. I really couldn't do that in the previous answer. But so for those unfamiliar, it's literally this simple. So you set a timer for 5 minutes, and you do as many reps of a given exercise as possible during that time frame. Now, I believe I mentioned chins and dips when I discussed this prior as being ideal exercises for this technique, and they absolutely are. So we're going to take the example of chins, as they're usually the more demanding of the two movements for really strong guys. And even the very, very strong can get a challenging workout. So I'm assuming you're going into this, and let's say you can already perform 10 strict chin-ups. What you do is, as soon as you hit that timer, you begin by doing, let's say, 3 reps. Now, instead of regular two-handed overhand chin-ups, underhand, whatever you want to call them, I'm doing uneven chin-ups because, right, they're more demanding. These are not true one-arm chin-ups, but it's where you grasp your wrist, right, with the other hand. So you do 3 reps apiece, and then 30 seconds later, you duplicate that. You do 3 more for each arm. And 30 seconds after that, though, you're down to 2 reps for each arm, due, of course, to cumulative fatigue. And 30 seconds later, 2 more reps with each arm. And so at this point, we're 2 minutes in, and we've done a total of 20 reps when you add up the ones for the right and the left. And so you rest for 30 seconds or thereabouts again, and you get 2 reps with your right arm, because that's my strong one, and just 1 with my left, because it's my weaker of the 2. This is how it works out in the real world usually. And then 30 seconds later, you might do 1 rep for each arm. After that, after your next 30-second rest interval, I would suggest moving to regular, right, chin-ups. 2 hands, let's say a wider overhand grip, and you get 3 of those reps. And then the next, mini set, you get 2 reps, but now you're using a palms up, right, narrow grip, which works the biceps a little harder and some other things. But and then finally, with just 10 seconds left on the clock, you're going to pump out as many final reps as you can. Okay, and in this case, let's say you do 2. And what that leaves you with is you will have completed 33 chin-ups in 5 minutes using 4 different grips and getting the benefits of all of that. You need to take meticulous notes, because in order to beat your number in the future, you need to replicate, I think, the grips as best you can, because there's, right, most people are stronger palms up, but not everyone. Perform that workout twice a week and keep upping the rep total, and you will be on your way. So for everyone who thinks this sounds easy,
Hmm.
because it's just 5 minutes. Think again. It's some of the most demanding work you will ever do. The method works due to the fact that it increases training density, right? Or forcing you to do more work per unit of time. And some of you may be familiar with that via Charles Staley's excellent escalating density training from the book he published in the mid 2000s, I want to say. As a true student of the game, though, you should know it was Vince Gironda who at least introduced the concept to of training density to bodybuilders. In fact, in the March 1976 issue of Iron Man, he said this. Back in 1925, German scientists discovered that to acquire large muscles, you must increase the intensity of work within a given time. That means that it doesn't matter how much work you do. He says what counts is how fast you do it. And he's partially right, because I think it does matter how much work you do, because that's what ensures progression, right? Gironda, in fact, developed no less than four very measured, precise set rep schemes to be used in a specific sequence in order to maximize the training density or hypertrophy effect. It's also a happy coincidence that you're going to burn tons of fat because it's not unlike lactic acid tolerance training. So you're getting a double benefit. Those four methods, they'll be in next month's issue of the bulletin, which is just days away. And look, listen, wherever you get your training density and however you practice it, do it, because there's a reason Hollywood studios would send their actors to Vince,
Honda.
right? Guys like Michael Landon and Clint Eastwood, etc., for to get them in shape for their upcoming movie roles in record time. And this is one of the methods that was used, if not, I think, the most successful method in doing that.
Okay, next question comes from a live listener who's watching now, and that is Richard Miller, the fitness freak. He's watching on YouTube. I think I'm going to have a very disappointing answer for him. He says, "Hi guys, I'm seeing my doc next week about HRT. I'm 47. I'm fit. I'm ripped, and with test levels at 507, can you guys arm me with science to drop on her if she's hesitant to put me on HRT? We're getting hit hard by the porn spam robots right now, so just bear with me here for a second." And there is a second part to his question. He says also, what dosage should I be asking for so she doesn't short me? Thanks again. So I'm gonna answer this first, and I'm gonna let you answer. Okay? You're not gonna convince her to do anything that she doesn't want to do. You can't go in there with a study and she's going to go, oh, okay, well, like all my other patients, I do this with them, but I'll do something different with you. That you're not going to find a physician like that unless she's special. Unless she's special, she's going to tell you that 507 is okay for a guy your age, and she's going to be reluctant to prescribe testosterone. If she does, I would start out with at least 200 milligrams a week of testosterone enanthate or cypionate. But I predict that she's going to send you away. She's going to say, 507, you're in the normal range. Meanwhile, you're in the normal range for a 90-year-old man. Go ahead.
Well, much like you just said, the real issue here is this. You are, according to them, normal. And the issue that you'll always have with the doctor over things like this is the doctor has been trained to get sick people to normal. They have not been trained and look down, unfortunately, on getting normal people to optimal. That is a world of difference, and most physicians in that area are going to look at it as irresponsible to start monkeying with normal. So the chances that you're going to change her mind are almost zero. The physician that does could be looked at and probably would be looked at by a medical board and risk their medical license. As dumb as that sounds, that's what those doctors are up against, and that's what they have to deal with. from the AMA and other powers that be. So um, 507 to them is normal, and you're not going to change your mind. Now, how do 507 levels affect you? Um, you're, I would tell you, you might not feel bad, but you're not going to feel at the top of your game. If you are successful in convincing someone to give you HRT, or when it comes time, as you know, when your levels do drop to suboptimal, 200 milligrams is probably the most a lot of doctors are going to prescribe. In fact, I know a lot that up here anyway in the Northeast that would look at that as, whoa, that's way too much.
Right.
You would
They'll
have,
give you 200 milligrams every other week, which is garbage.
yeah, and you would have to really sell them on 200 versus let's say 100 milligrams. In some cases, even 100 milligrams, which is really 80 milligrams, right? Because 20% is a cypionate
Well,
ester
well,
and
it's
antioxidant.
80 milligrams and it's released over 28 days, with 50% of it being released in the first 3 to 4 days. The physicians don't understand the pharmacodynamics of testosterone preparation. Testosterone cypionate, which is what we prescribe here in the United States, and anthate in Europe, um, for 100 milligrams, it's only 80 milligrams of testosterone because the other 20% of that dose is the cypionate ester. And of that, 50% of that 80 is released in the first 4 days. And then the balance of 24 days, you're getting little tiny trickles a day, probably the kind of trickle that a 14-year-old girl starts getting when she's going into puberty. So if the doctor says, no, I'm going to give you this once every 2 weeks, you're going to have 4 days of feeling amazing. And then the other, 11 days of feeling horrible. And plus, that wild swing will precipitate more of the unwanted effects, hair loss, back knee. And then the doctor will say, oh, see, it's no good for you. You're losing your hair. No, it's the way you're prescribing it, doc. You're not going to teach this unless this doc already prescribes testosterone to her male patients. You're not going to educate her. She's not going to listen to you. I would say if she turns you away, find another doctor, and that's a lot easier than you think it is now with telemedicine.
Yeah, and that dose that you recommended, 200 milligrams a week. The research tells us, I think, 300 milligrams is the low end for adding muscle faster than normal. But certainly 200 milligrams is going to give people, especially people that are low or suboptimal, a much better boost in quality of life. So your energy, your mood, your thinking, all of that is going to be improved significantly at 200 milligrams a week.
And you can look for an online clinic. He's asking who to turn to. You can Google testosterone. They're advertising on Instagram now. TRT delivered right to your door. I mean, there's so many people out there that are doing good work in this area.
Yep.
It's not required. It's no fun trying to wrestle a doctor who is unknowing and teach them. They're not going to listen to you. They're not going to take your advice. You're a patient. The second they do that, they're saying to you, I really don't know what I'm doing. I'm going to take your advice. You're here seeing me. I'm going to take your advice.
Yeah.
No, it's not going to happen. All right. Next question, live listener, R. Vasquez 818 says, good morning, gentlemen. Vitamin C question. How much and what kind, natural or synthetic, for daily intake? Thank you. You
Well,
go.
yeah, I'll start here. The question of how much, it depends. And it depends because when you are sick or when your body's fighting something off, your immune system chews through vitamin C a lot faster than it otherwise would. And you can absolutely see this in the amount that will saturate you and put most people in the bathroom with the runs. As far as the forms go, plain old ascorbic acid has been shown to be effective and is what's used in a lot of these studies. Now, does that mean it's necessarily the best? Well, the best is going to, I think, vary from person to person and for purpose to purpose. I have both plain ascorbic acid here. I also have liposomal vitamin C, and several other forms that I find useful. Let's say I wouldn't pay astronomical amounts for vitamin C and all of these, various fancy forms and functions. But you might want to do what I do, which is you use the cheaper stuff when nothing's going on, or at least say, you're not fighting something off. And the more expensive, more bioavailable forms, certainly like the liposomal C, have that waiting in the wings, which is precisely what I have up in the cabinet, right? If somebody starts coming down with something. And by the way, it's happened twice now, once in my wife and once in my son recently, where they certainly had something coming on and they hammered the C, amongst some other things, but primarily C, one day, two at the most, they're back to 100%. And they are far from the only people that I've seen that in. And I've seen it in myself.
Jack LaLanne took 10 grams of just good old store-bought vitamin C a day. Mike
That's
O'Hearn takes 10 grams of good old store-bought vitamin C a day.
yeah.
Porter Cottrell has been taking 10 grams of vitamin C since he was a young bodybuilder, and he learned that Jack LaLanne was taking 10 grams of vitamin C a day. So how much should you take? You could take 5 grams, 6 grams, 7 grams, 8 grams, 9, 10. It depends on, yeah, I would take it across a couple doses a day. I wouldn't throw 10 grams in my mouth. I'd throw 5 maybe early and 5 later. I'd be careful about taking it before bed because it could disrupt sleep because it alters glucose. Vitamin C looks like blood sugar to the body, which is why it probably gives you some energy. So I wouldn't go crazy and have to buy an expensive vitamin C. I'd buy a plain old vitamin C, ascorbic acid, or a sorbate. As far as synthetic, I mean, they're all synthetic. Okay, they're all made in a lab, but they are the exact same molecules as you find in an orange, for instance. Unlike some vitamin E's, which they have a synthetic version that has an L in it, DL tocopherol, instead of just D. That those studies have shown that they're dangerous. They actually block the ability of vitamin E to work. But with vitamin C, you could buy the cheap stuff at Costco, big bottles of it, and just start out trying to take the 5 grams a day and see how you feel.
Yeah, I would to summarize what I'm doing, 3 to 5 when nothing's going on, and then 10 to 20 or however much I feel I need when something is. So
Taylor C., who is watching on Facebook, since we just did the HRT questions, he said, my doc added HCG to my TRT to prevent hypogonadism. It's actually testicular atrophy. Hypogonadism is a term used for untreated people who have very low testosterone. But it's called testicular atrophy that happens because your testicles aren't being used to make testosterone. They start to shrink. With that being said, what you should be aware of is the best way to take it is 125 IUs each evening before bed. That will stimulate enough production of luteinizing hormone to stimulate your testes to keep working, even though they're not needed. Most people take large doses. There's a study out there that's very old that showed anything over 1,000 IUs a week actually damaged the Leydig cells. So you want to go easy with it. Some people, they just take 1,000 IUs twice a week or something like that, and they say, "Oh, I wake up so horny." Yeah, you wake up horny, but you're damaging your testicles completely now. But Dr. John Chrysler wrote a protocol that we talked about on my show many, many years ago, and it's the one I use. It's 125 IUs before bed every night. What do you think, Rob?
well, my experience with HCG is limited. I would tell you that it is the most reliable way to get your test production back. And it's a little not odd, but it's not seen as much in HRT, of course, as it is out in the world where guys are doing their own thing. And part of the reason for that is HRT might look to a medical board like the doctor's trying to help this guy cycle on and cycle off, and so they need to be careful. So in that respect, it surprised me a little bit. But hey, if you can get it, absolutely. Keep keep the testicles right active, or at least able to do their job, just in case.
Yeah, because your testicles produce other hormones besides testosterone. They produce pregnenolone, progesterone, so keeping them working, at least on other things besides testosterone. The other thing is, if you go to an HRT clinic, they will prescribe HCG for you. If you go into your family doc who barely understands HRT and wants to give you 100 milligrams every 2 weeks, of course he's not going to offer you HCG. He's going to say, wait, that's a fertility drug. They don't know anything.
Yeah.
And also, be aware, larger doses of HCG can make you hyperthyroid, because the way it looks like luteinizing hormone, it also looks like thyroid stimulating hormone to the body. It's an amazing peptide molecule. It really, really is. And Taylor C offers Paleo Valley, has an all food source vitamin C. That's fantastic. Oh, look, almost right on time. That's a fantastic but not cheap. Feels much better than ascorbic acid. I don't know what you feel and what you're speaking about, but yeah, if that's what you want to take it. All right, we're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, we have plenty more questions. You're watching and listening to Superhuman Radio. This is the Blueprint Power Hour. Go visit CoachRobRegish.com today. We'll be right back. Being superhuman means being conscientious about the choices we make. White Oak Pastures is superhuman when it comes to raising livestock. They're committed to animal welfare, land regeneration, and rural revival. They responsibly manage the entire process from the pasture to your doorstep. High-quality, pasture-raised, great-tasting meat from a farm you can trust. Full nose-to-tail selections. They even have options for your pet. Go to shrnetwork.biz/white oak and use the code SUPERHUMAN to save 10% off your entire first order. I would easily say that I am the hugest proponent you will ever meet to doing anything that will improve the quality of my sleep. And that's because sleep is linked to just about every metabolic disorder we see in our population today. One of the easiest things you can do to improve the quality of your sleep is to get a pillow that can be shaped into the exact form factor that allows you to get your best night's sleep. And that is MyPillow. I've been sleeping with MyPillow for a few years now, and I can tell you that when I have to travel and stay in hotels, I don't get a good night's sleep because I don't have MyPillow with me. Right now, you can save up to 60% off of everything offered to improve the quality of your sleep at shrnetwork.biz/mypillow when you use the code SHR. Or you can call toll-free 800-889-4938. And remember to use code SHR to save up to 60% off of everything at their website. More than 240 million Americans take supplements daily in pill form, but poor nutrient absorption means the promised results are rarely achieved. Healthy Cell uses a clinically proven patent-pending gel delivery system that increases absorption by 165% over pill form. Go to shrnetwork.biz/healthycell. That's HEALTHYCELL today and use the code SHR to save 20% off your purchase of Healthy Cell supplements. Are you 35 or older? Every year after puberty, your growth hormone decreases sometimes by 50% by the age of 35, and it only keeps going down from there. This affects everything from making it harder to recover from workouts, sleep, and a general loss of a sense of well-being. It also affects your ability to get and stay lean. BioPro Plus is the first of its kind, 100% non-synthetic alternative to prescription synthetic growth hormone treatments. All the benefits without any of the needles or side effects and 100% safe. Previously only available through doctors, you can go to shrnetwork.biz/biopro, that's BIOPRO, and use code SHR30 for $30 off today. Remember those rectangular toaster pastries you used to love when you were a kid? Well, Legendary Foods has just made them better. The new cake-style tasty pastry is like nothing you've ever had before. With 20 grams of high-quality protein and less than 1 gram of sugar, you'll feel like you're cheating, but you're not. Go to shrnetwork.biz/biopro shroom.biz/legendary and use the code SHR10 to save 10% off your purchase of tasty pastries. Now available in cookies and cream, red velvet cake, birthday cake, blueberry, strawberry, brown sugar cinnamon, and hot fudge sundae. Go to shrnetwork.biz/legendary and use code SHR10 today. If you'd like a shortcut to better sleep, more energy, and calmer, more stable moods, then you should make sure you're supplementing with magnesium daily. Let me tell you why. About 75% of people are magnesium deficient. This deficiency can lead to higher levels of anxiety, irritability, trouble sleeping, and low energy. It can even contribute to foot and leg cramps while you sleep. Magnesium Breakthrough by Bioptimizers is the single best magnesium supplement in the world. Simply take 2 capsules before you go to bed, and you'll be amazed by the improvements in your mood and energy levels and how much more rested you feel when you wake up. I take Magnesium Breakthrough every night, and I sleep better because I use it. Go to magbreakthrough.com/SHR and use the code SHR10 during checkout to save 10% off and get free shipping. Check it out.
This is the Superhuman Channel, where brawn and brains finally meet.
Welcome back. Okay, let's get back to one of the questions that was sent in by email. Oh, God, this one's a scathing one. I'm surprised you put this up, to tell you the truth, because I feel like this guy is a dick. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
He'll probably never watch the show again. But Bob Roberts says, why haven't you answered my previous emails about ecdysterone? Are you going cold on that now after people got no results from terkesterone, which is allegedly the strongest ecdy? No, it's not. There's so many people out there. I mean, even there's an anabolic steroid guru that I follow on Instagram. His last name is Black. Isn't it funny? I'm going to forget his first name now. Victor Black. Guy's brilliant. He really is. He's way ahead of everybody else out there talking about anabolic steroids. And he completely crapped on terkesterone for the longest time because it doesn't work like other ecdies do. But okay, we'll continue. You can use. Let me go. So it's the strongest ecdy you can use. I think you're being exposed now as a fraud. If you were legit, you wouldn't have products like Synthegen that use it. You don't even have a pre-workout or a protein powder. Since when did that become the benchmark of a successful supplement manufacturer? I don't know why people listen to you, especially when you're selling snake oil.
You know, the truth is I don't get many emails like this, but maybe every 3-4 months, something like that.
I often get critical emails, but and a lot of them I really take seriously. I think, well, they say I shouldn't do this anymore. I shouldn't. I've had people say, why do you cover your face when you're on the air? The truth is I don't like my mug and it's looking at me, and I'm reminded that I look like an old friggin' shoe, so I cover my face. And that's the God's honest truth. But like a lot of times I look for the pearl of wisdom in it, but I don't find anything in this guy. He just wants to harangue you. That's all he wants to do.
Well, I figured I'd address it anyway, right? Because I want people to know my side of the story. Ecdysterone always has been, probably always will be a controversial item. But anyway, so first off, why haven't I answered his previous emails about ecdysterone?
Yeah, what's up with you, man?
The simple answer is that when I went back and looked, I missed them, and there were 2 of them. So for missing those emails, I will extend my apologies. But
for the rest of the email, fuck you. No, I'm sorry.
Well,
I'm just funny.
Actually, I guess people should know this. You can't imagine how many emails, texts, Facebook messages, private messages, etc. I get every week, and I do my absolute best to answer all of them. But when 90% start with, I need, where can I find, can you help, that sort of thing, it gets really overwhelming. And I try and help people as often and as best as I can, to the best of my ability. But the honest truth is that sometimes I either can't because it's not my wheelhouse, or I miss something. So if I did, I'm sorry. And I did in this case.
Taylor C says snake oil has a shitload of omega-3s. Why does it catch so much heat? That's a good one. That is true. That's good.
Second issue to address, am I going cold on acne? No, certainly not. I think the quality products perform remarkably well for some people, and I'm one of them. I always have been. And the studies just keep on racking up impressive findings too. So no, I'm not going cold on it. In
But
fact,
hasn't your position always been full spectrum? Because there's a lot of stuff that works that we don't even know about, and the whole isolated testosterone. Haven't you talked about on the show that no one sees the results from an exclusively testosterone product?
right, and I have. I've been saying that ever since day one, and when it wasn't popular, and it probably still isn't popular. But um, the fact is, there are other actives that work and work well, and I'll back that up with the fact that virtually every study that has come out on ecdy since the late 60s has shown they either work, they show the mechanism of action when people thought there never was one, and repeated that lie over and over and over, or they otherwise identify something very beneficial that they do in the body. So essentially, these studies, the more recent ones, have verified the positive findings of the studies done in the former Soviet Union, aka Russia. And those are being done and have been done, by the way, at places like Rutgers, Baylor, very prestigious universities in Germany, in Hungary, and elsewhere. So they're a nice pie in the face, if you will, to those people who early on dismissed the Russian studies and demanded that those studies be done in the West. If they really have positive findings, why aren't they done in the West? Well, that's a very arrogant, attitude,
Yeah, it
first of
is.
all.
Yeah, like we're the only ones that understand science. Sean Wasson says Synthogen works. Bottom line, he's been a client of yours for a long time. He says,
Yeah,
plus it's always the source and the process.
right. And so they've historically demanded these quote unquote Western studies. Well, now we have them, and I still hear from idiots like this. Some people will just never be happy. With respect to turkesterone, he apparently hasn't listened to my opinions on such, which you just outlined, Carl, nicely. I've said since day one, it's not the best one, far from it. But here's where I think much of the confusion may lie. Turkesterone is one of 539 ecdysterones identified to date, and they are still pulling them out of plants like Raponticum and identifying new ones. So while Turk isn't anything great, uh, I think other ecdysterones certainly are quite effective, and I don't need to prove that, right? That the right kind and enough of ecdy works. Not when I have a growing body of scientific literature on my side, not when consumers keep buying it year in and year out, and certainly not when people keep asking me, and I get this at least once a month, hey, what's really in Synthogen? What's really in it? Well, what's
Debo.
really in? Yeah,
Well,
what's really in it?
if you hinted that there's Debo in it, your sales would probably quadruple overnight.
Yeah,
Because
probably.
people are like, oh yeah, I want some Debo.
Well, the truth of the matter is what's really in there is what's really on the label. And if I were interested in ripping people off and as snake oil, as you eloquently say, I certainly wouldn't be forking over the dough for what quality Raponticum costs, right? I just do what most companies do. I would dress up some stupid cheap ingredient like caffeine or yohimbe or what have you. I'll give it a cool new name, and I'll use bogus before and after pictures of people that I maybe paid to get out of shape and then get back into great shape in record time, right?
Well,
Or
and,
for
and use the COA from China that says that it's 100% Raponticum.
right.
It's just
And so, but the fact is, right? I mean, you don't see any of that, do you? Not in my stuff anyway. No, not anywhere. Not even close. And I laugh at this guy who thinks not selling a pre-workout or a protein powder somehow makes you a fraud. Let me explain something to you. Those are two items that almost every company carries, and neither is usually innovative. In fact, I can only think of one or two products that are out of probably hundreds. One, the pre-workout, right? The pre-workout companies make obscene amounts of money on that due to the fact that it's grossly overpriced,
Right.
usually underdosed, and most of the raws are dirt cheap.
And it's not encapsulated, which costs a lot more money than throwing a bunch of stuff in a little jug and throwing a scooper in.
Correct. And boy, when they all learn that out with Jack 3D, after they learn that, boy, now you know why every company's got one. The other item mentioned is a protein powder, and it's a product that I was once told, and I'll never forget it. If you want to lose a lot of money in this business, do a protein powder. It's almost impossible to make a decent profit, especially on a high-end, good protein.
Right.
Shipping alone will kill you. And that was before, the current inflation mess. So you can imagine what it is now. So no, I didn't do any of that. I formulated a product that spared no expense on the raws. It was designed to be used by an educated consumer. And by the way, it's still around a decade later selling strong. So no, I don't do rehashed hash. I formulate, or try to, innovative formulas, products that last. They stand the toughest test of all, the test of time. And just because one has ecdy in it, I don't see that certainly as a negative. Listen, people don't keep buying things that don't work. Synthogen and other quality ecdysterone products do, which is why that product, by and large, has repeat buys because of the best advertising that I could ever buy. Word of mouth. You just heard it from the studio audience, right?
Well, here. So here. Thomas Whittingham says he just got his 21% savings last night. So that's the sale, right?
I can't remember. Spring, I think, is the discount code. I don't know if it's still going on, but I do know last I checked, which was yesterday or the day before, there was plenty in stock. So anyway, listen, these people, the kind of people that this guy is, they're always going to be out there somewhere, right? But it is important, I think, for people to hear the truth, because the vast majority of people know the truth when they hear it. I'm grateful for their kind words of appreciation, and I get them all the time, as just happened minutes ago. Whether that's an article in the bulletin, something I've written about, Synthogen, or something else, just answering their questions, it means a lot. So, and for what it's worth, I hear a lot more from the good people out there versus this brain dead Bob guy. So that's my position on the matter. I won't be changing anytime soon. I won't be taking Raponticum out of Synthogen probably ever. So.
And Thomas Whittingham implies that maybe we should cut Rob Roberts some slack, since his name, he probably had a tough life growing up with the name Rob Roberts. I don't know about that.
Possibly.
Humorous. And who knows? Maybe he will share the show. Richard Miller says he's not going to go to heaven if he doesn't share the show. So maybe he will go. Maybe he'll share the show anyway. I don't think he'll share this show because he doesn't want people listening to our comments about him. But in all honesty, you know what? He's entitled to his opinion. Everybody's entitled to their opinion. So there you go. We're going to take a quick commercial break. We have a couple live questions still coming in. We have some emailed questions. So stay tuned. Stick around. Don't bail on me because the commercials are playing. I noticed the last commercial break, everybody stayed. In fact, we picked up 3 listeners. Yeah, that's good. So stick around. We'll be right back. Stay tuned. Most people have heard of phytoestrogens, but did you know there are beneficial phytoandrogens? The top source of these is pine pollen. It even contains trace amounts of testosterone and DHEA. If you're looking for a 100% natural testosterone booster, this is worth trying. Lots of men love it, and it even works for women. Lost Empire Herbs offers the highest quality, wild-harvested, non-irradiated pine pollen backed by a 365-day money-back guarantee. It works for you, or you don't have to pay for it with nothing to send back. Go to shrnetwork.biz/ Lost Empire. Use code SHR. Get 15% off your order today. C60, also known as Buckminster fullerene, is the most powerful, most versatile antioxidant in the world. It's been shown in studies to double the lifespan of rodents. We all know the importance of taking antioxidants to slow aging, reduce inflammation, and improve mitochondrial function and energy production. But there are literally hundreds of antioxidants that would cost you thousands of dollars to take every day. I take one. I take C60 from C360 Health. Revive and Rejuvenate are two blends that harness the power of C60. Don't waste another minute. Go to shrnetwork.biz/revive and use the code SHR for 15% off and free shipping inside the United States today. You may be wondering why you're experiencing performance issues in the bedroom, but you're not alone. Over 30 million men experience a form of erectile dysfunction, and to many, it can feel defeating. Maybe you've tried pills, diets, exercise, but finally there's a proven solution. Meet Eddie, a discreet device designed to help men strengthen and maintain their erections. Pills can be costly and result in debilitating side effects, so I checked out Eddie by Giddy at shrnetwork.biz/Eddie and found out that over 95% of men experience positive results wearing Eddie, according to a 2021 clinical trial. This product simply works and is easy to use. Sign up for a subscription at shrnetwork.biz/Eddie and save $20 on your first device with promo code SUPER20. With free device resizes and 60-day guarantee, you'll be glad you tried it. Treat ED with Eddie at shrnetwork.biz/Eddie. That's EDDIE.
Dogs should be powered by fat and protein, not carbs. That's why Visionary Pet makes low-carb, ketogenic dog food for dogs of all breeds and life stages. From kibble to freeze-dried and even low-carb treats, all Visionary Pet recipes are very low-carb, ketogenic, and made with 100% real meat protein. Shop now and use code SHR for 20% off your first order today. Your dog deserves the lifelong benefits of optimal nutrition. Make the switch to Visionary and see why smart dogs eat low carb.
New Mass Pro Synthogen X2 just upped its own legendary game. To distance itself even further from the rest of the pack, Synthogen X2 now has double the key active ingredients. If you've ever wondered what steroid-like recovery feels like, Synthogen X2 delivers. See why others compare it favorably to powerful bodybuilding drugs at synthogen.com. Mass Pro Synthogen. When you train with it, you'll gain with it.
Plant medicine has become all the rage for mental optimization. Now there's an ancient plant medicine rapidly growing in popularity that experts believe might just be the alcohol of the future. It's called True KAVA. KAVA is a natural food-grade elixir that has been used for over 3,000 years by South Pacific Islanders as safe, non-addictive alternative to drugs and alcohol. By naturally boosting the brain's main feel-good chemicals, dopamine, serotonin, and GABA, KAVA provides you with both increased relaxation and mental clarity at the same time. True KAVA is a new form of stabilized full-spectrum traditional KAVA that is third-party lab tested for quality and safety. Go to shrnetwork.biz/true KAVA, and that's TRUKAVA, all one word, and use code SHR for 25% off today.
This is the Superhuman Channel. Evolution just got kicked up a notch.
Welcome back. The top of the hour will be joined by Cameron George to talk more about KAVA. KAVA is by far one of the most exciting new plant products out there, and it's really its consumption has gone up. But where you get your KAVA really makes a big difference, and we're going to talk about that. Okay, next question. Let's get this one in first. So let's see here. Jonathan Layson says, Rob, what would the benefits of Ecti or Synthogen, for that matter, what be if I'm already on TRT? You think there's any value in it?
Potentially, because Ecti has always been speculated in the protein synthesis department to work via messenger RNA. And HRT test docking at the receptor is part of DNA transcription, or the message to the cell nucleus to turn on protein machinery, right? Accelerate it. Whereas Ecti has always been speculated not to do that, not work hormonally, but rather go right into the ribosome, right, the factory of the cell, where they're putting together hopefully new structural proteins, which amounts to new muscle. And to get those workers to start working, more efficiently, faster, more workers. There's a lot of speculation as to exactly what it's doing, but it's always been a messenger RNA translation accelerator, if you will. So yeah, I think it could be it certainly is highly complementary in the recovery department. In the words of one guy, he told me, he said it takes 400 milligrams of test that I'm using to like 800 milligrams to 1,000 milligrams of DECA in the recovery department. Now, I've never used those two together. I've never used DECA. Um, that is also, I think, part of the benefits associated with ECDI and a hormonal, certainly like HRT, testosterone.
Okay. Let's see here. Let's get to one of the mailed-in questions, and then we'll get to the rest of the live questions. This one comes from Dan Falvey. He says, I've learned so much from you two, and I want to thank you for the content. I laughed at your rant about influencers and building muscle. It got me thinking about Peter Attia posting weird exercises he does to increase things like grip strength. Do you think there is a longevity benefit for training specific to some of these markers, for example, grip strength, that have been associated or shown to be associated with increased health span? No, increased lifespan, that health span. To me, it seems that it was probably just something that was easy to measure, and overall strength is possibly the key. You're exactly right. So the study of, we talked about the study on grip, the first study on grip strength, probably in 2007, 2008. We talked about the first study on the leg strength and longevity. Both of these are examples, easy to test for strength in general, right? If you have strong grip strength, you have strong leg strength, then chances are you're a strong person. Grip strength is one of the early ones to go because of small blood vessels that start to deteriorate and get smaller, nerve systems that start to deteriorate and not activate muscle. So it's easy. You're right. You're spot on. It's easy. Training grip strength exclusively and expecting it to translate into a longer life is complete bullshit. If you train with weights and you train chest and shoulders and back and legs, and you do these routines week in and week out, sure, your grip strength's going to be strong, but that's what's going to make you live longer. Entire body strength, you could train your forearms from now till the cows come home and sit in a chair while you're doing it, and you're still going to die early. So yeah, you're right.
I think you hit the nail on the head there. You know, the research tells us it's grip strength. The reality is, I mean, how many people do you know in resistance training that train only their grip? I mean, even the guys training to crush the gold standard, right? The captains of crush grippers,
Right.
They're not ignoring their other body parts per se.
Right.
So to me, it's like looking through a straw and seeing something that looks really good, but you don't realize it's so much bigger.
Yeah. It's
much
overall strength. If you're hard to kill, you're hard to kill. We're going to cover these really, really, really quick because then we have the blueprint tip of the day to get into. Chris K says, is there a way to test yourself for sleep apnea without doing a sleep study? Yes, I did it. That's how I found out I had sleep apnea. There's an app called Sleep Cycle. You want to use the paid version. I think it's like $10, something like that. And you want to set it up to record your sleep. So when you set it up, turn the record on, use the microphone, set it next to your bed face down, and then listen to the episodes. It'll say snoring, and then listen. I was holding my breath for 37 seconds at a time. And I went out and got my own CPAP and set it up myself, and it changed my life. I just used the nose. Because I tape my mouth when I sleep. So I just use the nose thing, and it just puts a gentle gust of air in my head, so to speak, to keep the soft part of my throat from caving in. But you can do that, and that'll tell you if you're holding your breath at night. Obviously, it sounds to me like you sleep by yourself, because otherwise your wife would be waking up Or Chris could be a gal's name. I'm sorry, but your partner would be waking up and saying, "Hey, you're snoring." But yeah, get the sleep cycle. That'll tell you. Sleep with it a couple nights in a row. Listen to it. When you listen to it, you're gonna feel anxious because you think, "Oh my God, like I'm holding my breath." Yeah, that's right. That's right. Um, Joe Author says bioidentical hormone replacement therapy induced acne. Yes, of course. That's usually from a higher conversion to DHT. His wife has hormones tuned up, but she has exploded with acne. It doesn't always have to be hormonal, just for the record. She could have something else going on. But if it is hormonal, she needs to start taking large doses of vitamin. Wait, I'm sorry. She needs to increase her progesterone. She needs to increase her progesterone because progesterone is a natural 5-alpha reducer blocker. So less of her testosterone will become DHT. You want to throw in anything there, Rob?
No, I think that that pretty much covers it. That's obviously usually much more concerning in a female than a male. It doesn't look good in either. But I don't know. I think you covered it adequately.
But don't discount other things like liver. The liver is notorious for producing acne. Anything that goes on in your liver shows up on your skin. So keep that in mind as well. And last one, it says Facebook user because your security is turned on. Can BPC 157 and TB 500 be used at the same time in the same location? Yes.
They're
Had a call.
frequently used, right, in the same time.
In fact, I put them in the same syringe. Put them in the same syringe. You're fine with it. They buffer fine. All right, Rob, what is the blueprint tip of the day?
The tip of the day is about beware people that try to drag you down with them. And so when I graduated college eons ago and went to work, I learned about happy hour. Of course, I knew what it was and what transpired there. What I didn't know was the importance these people attached to it, and more importantly, how offended some people got when you said you weren't going to go. Um, but I learned fast, right? So there was one Friday. He was a coworker. He told me about where happy hour would be that night, what time it started, and how the whole team was going to be there, except me. Now I was polite enough, saying no, thank you, but I was astonished at how bent out of shape this guy was, that I wasn't going. And I remember almost word for word. He's like, "What do you mean you're not going? You're not married. You don't have kids. Why aren't you going?" And so I simply explained that I was training and always did train very early on Saturday morning, something that I did religiously. Now, I didn't mention this to him at the time, but Saturday morning was leg day, which everyone knows is a bear, even when you're at your best. And so this guy was incredulous. He really, he almost couldn't believe it, and he was barely able to muster okay as we walked out that day. We always left at the same time, parked, close to each other, that sort of thing. He was just beside himself. And so, fast forward to the next Friday, and he again approaches me with the same info and the same invite, and I once again politely declined. And this time, he really lost. He goes, "Why aren't you going this time?" And so I told him again, same thing. Um, and his response was, "The whole team's going except for you. What's wrong? You don't like us? You don't want to be part of the team?" Teams were a big deal at the time in corporate America. I don't know if they still are. Uh, they described to us, I'll never forget, it might have been the first day I was there. They sat everybody down and they described to us how much more productive the Japanese were, right, at pumping out all those great cars while Americans couldn't. And it was all because supposedly they worked in as a team. So being assigned to the team was one of the first things that I experienced. I don't think it was day two before I had heard, "Welcome to the team." Right? And we even did these team building exercises outside, the whole fall backwards and somebody will catch you thing. And believe it or not, they actually did this fairly regularly. all the while our customers are back on hold, right? Like that I didn't understand. I still don't understand it. They even ruined golf, in my opinion, by putting everyone in the work league on teams. And they had softball and basketball, and you were expected, right, to partake in these things as a team player. And I rejected that more or less, actually a little bit more. And my rationale was, listen, I already worked with you folks 40 hours a week. I don't want or need to spend any more time with you than I already do. I will come here every day and do my absolute best to perform my job like everybody should. But I made it known that, listen, I have other goals and aspirations, and the bar is not part and parcel to me getting there. In fact, it's going to delay that. And so for those transgressions, quote unquote, he's not a team player is what my next annual review had written on it. So look, listen, um, if you want a strong, healthy body, you're going to need to make sacrifices. You can't just eat anything. And sometimes you have to pass on dessert, maybe all the time. You'll need to skip happy hour too, or at least, you don't want to drink or stay out late too very often. Squatting 600 pounds is difficult. It's damn difficult, even when you're well rested and sober. And if you don't believe that, try doing it with a hangover, right? And on 2 to 3 hours of sleep. These people just couldn't understand that. And even though a fair number of them drank regularly and got hangovers, and some came to work hungover. This was a big revelation to me when I got into work. The number of people that had problems with alcohol were staggering to me anyway. But these people do, and they have hangovers, and then they're still, of course, able to drag themselves out of bed, drive to work, and make it through a workday in that state. You cannot do the same when you have a physical gut check, like training to a very high level and holding yourself to a very high standard, and certainly not when PRs are on the agenda. I learned early, you can drink heavy or you can lift heavy. Pick one because you ain't doing both. So yeah, they took it personally when I wouldn't drink or stay out late with them. And once I'd had enough of answering nicely and dealing with all the backlash, I finally said, listen, I'll tell you what, you come see me tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. and you can try to hang with me set for set and rep for rep. And you can experience firsthand why I don't drink or stay out late on Friday nights when I have early morning workouts on Saturday, like everyone else. They never, of course, took me up on that offer. They didn't want to hear anything about that. Um, I think they knew it was the truth, but they resented me for making a choice to forego time with them and instead invest in myself. And we're getting down to the real point here. Um, Investing in yourself. I didn't last long in that job for a number of reasons, but I truly believe not being a team player but probably played the biggest role, of me leaving. You may be asked to make similar choices wherever you work. If you're not in the workforce yet and you'll be getting out soon, you're probably going to have to make a choice like that and understand it may not be easy saying no, right, to these people, especially when you're new in a job. But I can tell you this, 30 years later, and with the benefit of hindsight, I know for a fact I made the right decision because you will never regret investing in yourself. Never. Conversely, there are going to be a lot of times that you will always regret investing and counting on other people. Okay. And that goes for family members too. Um, None of these people became part of my life. Some of them even, I was persona non grata after it was found out, I wasn't, I guess, conforming to what the boss wanted to see as a team player. But here's the thing, that team didn't last long. Some people left the company shortly after I did. Some moved on to other jobs. Some of them are dead. One passed away recently as he awaited a liver transplant. Maybe one too many happy hours, right? Another one died of a drug overdose. I heard that just recently too. It didn't take long to see for myself, right? The whole quote unquote team thing. It's a charade. Your employer has a very specific task. Get the absolute most out of you for the absolute least. And this is part of it. So don't fall for it. Stay strong to who you are and what needs to be done to accomplish your goals. You will bleed, you will sweat, and you will sacrifice. If other people give you shit for that, or they just can't understand it, cut them out of your life. I'll tell you that. Just cut them straight out of your life. I've got a strong set of legs today, due in large part to the hard work that I put in my 20s. Not due to happy hour, not because I was some sort of team player. It was guts, fortitude, something these people are very short on. So please, when this dilemma presents itself in the future, always invest in yourself and never look back. You need to beware of these people that try and drag you down with them. So yeah, that was a big lesson that I learned, and I still think about that.
Yeah. All right, CoachRobRegish.com is the place to go to learn more about Rob. Go there today. Be stronger tomorrow. I'm out of town next week, so there won't be a Blueprint Power Hour next week.
Yeah, well, we'll just double up the following week.
Yeah, that's what we'll do. Okay. All right, listen, thanks for being here, Rob. We're going to take a quick commercial break, and when we come back, we'll have Cameron George join us and talk about KAVA, which has become a friend of mine. I sleep better when I use True KAVA. You will too. But you have to know where you get your KAVA from, because this KAVA is like going to a sushi bar and ordering blowfish. If they do it right, it's delicious and it's wonderful. But if they do it wrong, it can make you really, really, really sick. And that's why you have to know who you're dealing with, because there's going to be a lot of newcomers to the KAVA arena because the product is getting so very popular. So we will tell you shortly how to navigate and stay safe and stay healthy, but still enjoy the benefits of this plant medicine. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. If you'd like a shortcut to better sleep, more energy, and calmer, more stable moods, then you should make sure you're supplementing with magnesium daily. Let me tell you why. About 75% of people are magnesium deficient. This deficiency can lead to higher levels of anxiety, irritability, trouble sleeping, and low energy. It can even contribute to foot and leg cramps while you sleep. Magnesium Breakthrough by Bioptimizers is the single best magnesium supplement in the world. Simply take 2 capsules before you go to bed, and you'll be amazed by the improvements in your mood and energy levels and how much more rested you feel when you wake up. I take Magnesium Breakthrough every night, and I sleep better because I use it. Go to magbreakthrough.com/SHR and use the code SHR10 during checkout to save 10% off and get free shipping. Check it out. If you've listened to Superhuman Radio for any length of time, you know I'm a big proponent of peptides. One of my favorites is GHKCU, the blue copper peptide. It has the ability to repair and regenerate more youthful expressions of skin cells, reversing the signs of aging. Restore Cell's Stem Cell Awakening Serum, along with their other products, contain potent formulations of blue copper peptide and only the highest quality organic ingredients. Superhuman Radio listeners can now save 25% site-wide. Buy their complete set and receive a free exfoliating cleanser. Go to shrnetwork.biz/blue and use the code SHR25. That's SHR25. Remodel your skin today. Plant medicine has become all the rage for mental optimization. Now there's an ancient plant medicine rapidly growing in popularity that experts believe might just be the alcohol of the future. It's called True KAVA. KAVA is a natural food-grade elixir that has been used for over 3,000 years by South Pacific Islanders as safe, non-addictive alternative to drugs and alcohol. By naturally boosting the brain's main feel-good chemicals, dopamine, serotonin, and GABA, KAVA provides you with both increased relaxation and mental clarity at the same time. True KAVA is a new form of stabilized full-spectrum traditional KAVA that is third-party lab tested for quality and safety. Go to shrnetwork.biz/true KAVA, and that's TRUKAVA, all one word, and use code SHR for 25% off today. Being superhuman means being conscientious about the choices we make. White oak Oak Pastures is superhuman when it comes to raising livestock. They're committed to animal welfare, land regeneration, and rural revival. They responsibly manage the entire process from the pasture to your doorstep. High-quality, pasture-raised, great-tasting meat from a farm you can trust. Full nose-to-tail selections. They even have options for your pet. Go to shrnetwork.biz/white oak and use the code SUPERHUMAN to save 10% off your entire first order. If you've listened to this show for any length of time, you know that I have struggled to give up coffee for years. Coffee has destroyed my gut and it's impaired my health. Well, I haven't had coffee in months thanks to a product called Magic Mind. Magic Mind is the first nootropic blend I actually feel working. One shot and I'm good all day long. My memory is crystal clear and I'm able to function and have great focus without coffee or caffeine for that matter. If you want to try a product that really works, if you're like me and you want to give up coffee forever, or you just need something occasionally that will help you lift the brain fog, Magic Mind is your product. I promise you that this product you will feel when you use it. Go to shrnetwork.biz/magicmind, all one word, and use the code SHR for a whopping 20% off your first order. Most people have heard of phytoestrogens, but did you know there are beneficial phytoandrogens? The top source of these is pine pollen. It even contains trace amounts of testosterone and DHEA. If you're looking for a 100% natural testosterone booster, this is worth trying. Lots of men love it, and it even works for women. Lost Empire Herbs offers the highest quality wild harvested, non-irradiated pine pollen backed by a 365-day money-back guarantee. It works for you, or you don't have to pay for it with nothing to send back. Go to shrnetwork.biz/lost empire. Use code SHR. Get 15% off your order today.
Spit that out right now. This is the Superhuman Channel.
Welcome back to Superhuman Radio. We're joined by Cameron George. He is the proprietor of True KAVA. And recently he was on the show, and I commented that he had a beautiful mind because you can actually learn so much just by letting him go. And one of the things we didn't talk about last time when we talked about KAVA was that who produces your KAVA for you is very critical. Because there are some parts of the KAVA plant that you shouldn't be using to produce human supplements. Is that correct?
Right. Yeah, that's absolutely correct. And there's, KAVA, just like any plant compound or plant medicine, is a complete living organism. And it's there are certain parts of the KAVA plant that are edible and certain parts that aren't. Just kind of like if you take many other plant medicines or plant compounds that are edible in certain forms but not edible in other forms. Rhubarb, for example, there are parts of the plant that you can make a nice pie out of. There are other parts that are very toxic.
Mm-hmm.
Even like apple seeds have trace amounts of cyanide-like compounds in them that are somewhat carcinogenic. So. And then there's a lot of, plants that you can eat, like, say the root materials, which is a lot more common because the aerial parts in plants are the parts that are exposed to pests and other environmental threats, basically, that cause the plant to have to biologically adapt, to the environment by
defense mechanisms. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So they create these plant defense proteins or compounds that basically deter animals from eating them because it makes them really sick by doing so. Because, plants can't defend themselves biomechanically, so they have to do it through chemistry, right?
I say plants can't fight, bite, or run.
Right.
And so they have to have other ways to deter you from preying upon them. And there, I actually listened to a lecture in around 2007, 2008, that made the supposition that the phytoestrogens found in soy are actually designed to eliminate the animals that prey upon it, because it keeps, if the male of the species or the female of the species eats a lot of soy, it dysregulates birth cycles, both because the female may her cyclicity changes, the male loses his libido, and basically they wipe themselves off the planet by eating soy. and all plants have this. All plants. And someone just told me recently, I never knew this, but if you eat completely raw almonds, like you're in the field and you're picking almonds and you eat them, they'll make you very, very sick. So,
yeah,
cashews, not almonds, cashews. I'm
right.
sorry.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Nothing in the natural ecology or in nature itself is purposeless, right? Because, nature is governed by this underlying substrate intelligence, right? If we, in today's world, you can call it by a lot of different names, whether it be from, spiritual practices and cultures around the world, whether you talk about the Gaian principle or you call it God or anything like that. It is very, very clear that there is an objective underpinning fabric of reality that is the basis intelligence that governs all life, right? And it's all sort of one interconnected ecosystem of which we're a part too. We're like an extension of that. And just like many other organisms, I mean, we happen to be one of the more complex organisms that's extended from this living world, this living intelligence. But all of the other kingdoms of life as well too are also living organisms that just exist in a different way than we do. We're higher vertebrates, and so we've developed the means and capacity to be able to be mobile and manipulate our environment and do all kinds of things. That's just a different way of existing. It's not necessarily better or worse, but plants have an intelligence that's governing them as well too. And so everything that they're doing in their environment is some sort of an adaptation to an existential threat or for, to perpetuate the process of growth and evolution, right? So, when plants produce compounds, they usually produce compounds in order to defend themselves from an existential threat, another organism, in order to perpetuate its own survival, or, to catalyze some process that allows for greater reproduction of itself, or to contribute to the macro environment that helps feed into a better sustainable, life cycle for itself as well too, right? So there is this intelligence, so basically all of the compounds in plants, even if we can't necessarily understand them, a lot of times we look at individual plants and we just see, if I walk outside and I see, a flower or a tree, most people tend to like look at that individual thing in a vacuum. Like, what is that thing and what is it doing in and of itself, right? It's just this one thing that's over there doing its thing. But it's part of this broad, sort of integrated intelligence that's part of this big, system. It's a living intelligent system, and it makes a contribution because individual organisms in the natural ecology are similar to, say, like individual cells in the human body, right? So they are just one part of a system that's totally dependent on that system for survival. And so every cell in the human body has a role to play. It secretes proteins and compounds that help to, better synergize with the cells around it to act in this perfect sort of symphony of life that allows the entire thing to move forward. So a lot of times, whenever we look at individual plants, we have to look at them in their broader, sort of ecological context to really understand why they act the way that they act and why they adapt the way that they adapt, right? So, bringing that into the conversation about KAVA plays a very protective role in its natural ecology. And so through adaptation, it develops a complete array of biochemical compounds that basically hit on every neuro and tissue protective mechanism that we know of in biology, right? And because we're part of the same living system as those plants, though that chemistry is cross-compatible with all of biology. So we basically, whenever we take that plant into our body, it transfers that protection to us. And so it helps to protect our biology. So whether it be the induction of deep sleep, or whether it be the reduction of, stress and anxiety, or whether it be the reduction of inflammation, those are all protective things that feel really good to us, but it's doing a lot for us on a basic cellular level. And that's because of its adaptive role. It's helping to contribute that protection to everything in its environment.
So let's talk about the plant for a second. Am I correct to understand that the leaves, the stems, and the peelings of the leaves and the stems should not be used in KAVA supplements? Or am I wrong about that?
That's correct. That's 100% correct. KAVA's been used for over 3,000 years in the South Pacific, right? It's traced back. Its longest lineage is traced back in the island chain of Vanuatu, which a lot of people haven't heard of, but everybody's heard of Fiji, and it's right off of the coast of Fiji. It's very close.
In fact,
But,
Vanuatu it's still to today is the major supplier of most of the really good kava out there, huh?
Yeah, Vanuatu supplies, somewhere in the neighborhood of 70% of the world's kava. I mean, because, Vanuatu is one country, but it consists of about 150 small islands, some small, some medium-sized, some a little larger. So, I mean, it's really like an island chain, and that's where most of the kava is produced. Fiji is number 2, and then all the island, chains around it, Tonga and Papua New Guinea and a few of these other places, also make a contribution, even Hawaii as well. But so that's, the climate and soil conditions are perfect, for, facilitating the growth of kava as an organism, obviously. But anyways, as far as like, the parts of the plant, kava's been prepared and drank in Vanuatu for over 3,000 years. Very, very long time. It's traced back. It's one of the oldest living, consistently, consume plant medicines that we know of, right? As far as like, civilizations are concerned, as far as like how deep its roots are, so to speak, within the culture, and how long it's persisted as part of the culture, as part of, the cultural context. But they discovered, throughout years and years, decades, centuries, millennia of experimentation, how to best, sort of dial in, kava so they can maximize its compatibility with the human body.
Right.
One of the initial things that was discovered was that, when they first came across this shrub, this plant in the pepper family, kava, thousands of years ago, some of this information still exists in some of the historical texts been passed down and things. They obviously started with consuming the aerial parts. And this is how, pretty much all things are discovered by indigenous people, dating back pre-science is experimentation, right? Just years of experimentation, direct experience. Before we had science, that was how you did it. So they would consume the aerial parts of the plant first, and they noticed they got these great effects, but it also made them sick the next day. Because the aerial parts also contain active constituents, kavalactones, these active things, but they also contain these defense compounds as well too. And so, basically they started consuming the roots and realizing that those were far more tolerable. And then they started to dial in to plant and replant and select for the varieties that were less aggressive and less wild, and sort of dialed them into, basically a range of strains that's super tolerable for the human body daily. And that really, really agrees, with human biology. And we call those varieties noble varieties, and they meet a certain chemical composition standard of these, basically, 20 to 50 strains that have been really, really dialed in for optimal daily, very, very smooth use, right? And so it's not just about the part of the plant, although that's the most important part. You're only supposed to consume the roots and just, what they call the basal stump, which comes just above the ground before it branches off into this into these bamboo-looking stalks. That's really the peelings of those are really where the plant starts to develop its plant defense compounds, because that's where the animals can really get to it and chew on it.
It's exposed, yeah.
Yeah. So it's the part of the plant, but then it's also the strain too, because there's the most wild kava is actually barely consumable. It's these strains that have been cultivated and really dialed in and kind of dialed back in some of their wildness, that are what the plant Kava pipermethysticum really is. Pure wild kava, that was actually the first strain that was discovered 3,000 years ago, before they sort of dialed it in through cultivation, is actually a different species called Piper weishmanii. And that's virtually not consumed by anybody today, because it's too aggressive still. It has so much of a protective aspect of it, but also an aggression to it that it's hard to tolerate large amounts.
Now, when we talk about the unwanted effects of consuming the wrong parts of the kava, most of that happens in the liver, right? If you're getting your kava from a company that isn't following the standard practices of producing kava supplements, you could be consuming the plant parts, the leaves, the stems. They can damage your liver, right?
Well, okay, so there's been a huge debacle that's circled around kava, and in regards to, liver function and hepatotoxicity.
Right.
So, so much so that even if you Google kava today, it's getting better, especially with a lot of the work that we're doing on education and differentiation of type and quality control. But there's still about, probably 50% of the results that you'll get makes this claim or this association between kava and liver toxicity. Now, just like almost anything surrounding the world of plant medicine, the devil's in the details and nuance matters, right? Because it's kind of like there's a massive difference between, synthetic marijuana or just regular marijuana and like CBD hemp, right? But for years, decades, those two were lumped together as the exact same thing, right? The devil's in the details and context matters, right? So whenever people say kava, they have to be clear about what they're talking about. That entire, narrative or belief system around that association, all centered around, essentially one event or one series of events that took place in the early 2000s. Before then, there were no safety concerns whatsoever, or reports in the anthropological data or in the scientific literature of safety concerns with kava. So that should tell you something in of itself. They did it for 3,000 years without any problems, and then man stepped in. A few scientists from a pharmaceutical company stepped in, and all of a sudden we have a problem. So it wasn't a kava issue; it was a quality control issue. Basically, what happened though was, around the turn of the century in the early 2000s, kava was starting to kind of hit this big boom. People were starting to realize what it was. And that its wide array of applications, and that it was this core part of life in the South Pacific, and it was great without side effects. And people were starting to realize there were a lot of side effects to like Valium and these medications that were just now sort of being realized how dangerous they were. And so there was this kind of move towards kava. So there was this gold rush by, a few pharmaceutical companies to go and to try to make a synthetic derivative that could be patentable. That could capitalize on the kava hype. Unfortunately, like many things in the Western mindset, they didn't understand that could cause issues, and they were just looking for something that obviously could maximize some profits. One pharmaceutical stepped in from Germany, made a product, actually didn't pay any attention to any of the quality control processes that we just talked about. Ended up what we know now, and what actually came out in the years of investigation, is that they most likely came across some waste material that was being sold to them by some unscrupulous farmers that they were trying to get lower cost on, and they were just looking for kava lactones because they thought this is the things that we want. They didn't see about what else was in the plant that they didn't want. So they were getting waste materials, and then they denatured them by creating these isolates with aggressive solvents that denatured the natural sort of entourage effect of the balance of all the constituents that keep each other in check once they come into the human body. It's a system, remember? So whenever you start isolating things, it's kind of like I can eat a steak, or I can eat organ meats that has all kinds of peptides and even like hormones and even like IGF-1 in it. But if I take, say, synthetic IGF-1 or growth hormone, it acts very differently in the body and can cause issues.
Right.
As if you take it within a system, the system has it's like an orchestra. All the other instruments keep it in check, right? It's like an assembly line. I think we discussed last time that metaphor. It's very good. But anyways, so they went and they denatured it through this process, started with crappy material. They ended up concentrating these plant defense compounds to unnatural levels. They're already toxic, but in most cases, I've very, very rarely, if ever, seen a true case of even liver issues or elevated liver enzymes, not even like full-blown liver toxicity, but even like liver issues at all from just even consuming the aerial parts of kava. It mainly just makes you feel sick, but it's usually not enough to cause any serious concern. Right. It's whenever you take those compounds, then super concentrate them, that now you have something that not only gives you symptoms, but can actually cause liver damage and liver failure. And that's what they saw in just probably a few dozen, participants in the study. And all the participants also, they didn't control for other, liver complications. Like most of the people in the study were all coming off of alcohol. That was the point of it. They were trying to get on kava. And so they already had compromised liver function. Most of them were on high doses of acetaminophen too, which is it's very, very compromising to the liver. So they didn't,
acetaminophen kills 100 people a month.
Yes. Yes. So So that's basically where it came from, was that this pharmaceutical stepped in, created this synthetic product that by definition was not kava. It was a derivative synthetic, extract,
Right.
compound. They hurt a few people. Then, the media went crazy with it. We think there was probably, some shady activity involved too by other pharmaceutical companies, kind of, covering it media wise. Just because, kava was really becoming a threat to, a lot of drugs in the industry. So, there might have been some of that, mixed in. You always have to, pay attention to that aspect of things. But either way, media went crazy with it. And, basically it just became this big story, even though it was this one or two isolated events. And several countries got scared and just banned kava outright. They didn't schedule it like a drug or anything like that, but they just banned it for sale. And, basically that led to this huge investigation in the scientific literature that was like this enigma that scientists couldn't understand. Like, hey, how has this been consumed for 3,000 years? And all of a sudden there's this issue here. And basically it was unpacked over the next 15 years. And basically the general consensus now in the scientific community is this was absolutely a quality control issue. Even the WHO, which is not quick to move on things a lot of times, has basically come to a conclusion and fully backed an international quality standard that separates food grade kava like we produce, the kava food, versus the synthetic derivative that can be dangerous, right? And so, kava is like the whole food. And then there's these synthetic derivatives. It's kind of like you go down to Peru. And I mean, this plant medicine is not as safe as kava, but it makes for a good analogy. You can have coca tea, right? Made from erythroxylum coca, which is, the species that cocaine is produced from. But
Right.
coca in and of itself is really a whole medicine that these people consume daily to adapt to altitude. It helps with, acute immune function and, opening up the airways and different things. It actually is a medicinal substance, and it doesn't ruin anybody's lives. It's not as tonic as something like kava, but it's not cocaine. Cocaine is like the isolated derivative that'll ruin your life over the weekend.
Right.
So they're very different things.
So, in the ancestral use of kava over thousands of years, and we touched on this, but I forgot to ask you this question. So it's chewed and made into a porridge. The young people chew it, spit into a cup or a bowl or what do you call it, a shell, and then everybody takes a sip of this, which you won't find this happening in the United States. But what role does the enzymes in saliva have to the preparation of kava, maybe making it safer, more effective, or whatever? And how do you replace that without chewing kava and spitting it into the bottle?
That's a great question. A lot of people wouldn't ask that question, but it is really important actually, because anyone who's an experienced kava user or that is interested in kava past just the surface level casual use understands that there's a huge spectrum of effectiveness in the effects profile of not only different strains, but different preparations, ways of preparing it, right? And the different concentrations, right? Like a base dose of, say, like one of the products that we sell is essentially kind of like a microdose of kava. Gives this like very kind of subtle relaxation that's very nice. You can consume it like you can, kombucha or anything else, and you can have, quite a bit of it, and it's very good. Large doses of kava for certain preparations, ways of breaking it down and preparing it can be much stronger, can be a very full body, intense relaxation that feels very much like alcohol, but without the drunkenness and almost very entheogenic. It can take you to this very introspective place that's very strong, but yet centered and non-habit forming. So it's great. So there's this big spectrum there. And a lot of that spectrum depends on not only just dose, but the way that it's prepared, right? So like, any experienced kava user knows that fresh kava prepared, traditionally is the most potent form of kava. Why? Because there are active living enzymes in the plant material, the roots of kava, that help with the bioavailability and the transport of the active constituents into the cell. okay, and even the half-life and how quickly they get uptaken in the gastrointestinal tract and can cross the blood-brain barrier, et cetera. So there are enzymes in that process that everybody knows that, like, good traditional dried kava, like the products, that we have, that's still traditional kava, is very good. But if you go to the islands and go into the villages, and either it be, I mean, hardly anybody does like the spitting preparation anymore.
Yeah,
They mostly
right.
squeeze it with the hands, but there still are some villages that do that. But like, aside from, the chewing and the spitting, even if you just get, fresh traditional kava that they pull the kava plant out of the ground and within minutes squeeze it, so it's still alive, basically, right? It's fresh out of the ground. All the enzymes are still there. It has an immediacy where it hits you almost immediately, right? And it has kind of that next level of effect, right? Because of the transport and because of the efficacy. Okay, so it's kind of similar with, with the chewing and spitting. There are enzymes in the mouth that basically help to release a lot of those compounds as well too. That's really, they play a role in not only activating those, similarly to how fresh kava has them, but if you were to chew and spit it, it just kind of takes it to a little bit of a next level. But it's a lot of that activity is already there if you have fresh kava. But if you have dried kava and you were to do the chewing and spitting, there are definitely enzymes in human saliva that can just speed up the transport, speed up the bioavailability. We haven't identified them all, but we know that they're there. Anyone who's studied kava or understands its different, effects probably knows that they're there. So it is very interesting. But we're working on some products for the future that actually that we're starting with fresh kava, and we have ways of preserving the enzymes through various drying processes, where we can we're trying to deliver that extra level of
Right.
sort of the psychological and physiological effects through that without having to chew it and spit it.
Taylor C says, are there any other supplements I should avoid if I'm taking my True Kava earlier in the day? Like some adaptogens. He takes reishi mushrooms, ashwagandha, and chaga.
Yeah, so when it comes to adaptogenic herbs, there are really no known counterindications with traditional kava because, the issues with kava are primarily if it's prepared wrong or if it's sourced incorrectly, right? Because then you have these defense compounds that can deplete enzymes in the liver, and then you got to be careful about combining with things like acetaminophen. Of course, I would avoid acetaminophen altogether if you can, but and avoid combining it with alcohol. Now, even high doses of kava lactones can have, kind of a diuretic effect. So anything that has an accelerated diuretic effect could just be a compounding effect there. Or if you have super high levels and you're not used to kava, it could cause some kind of, stomach upset, which is actually really rare. You usually have to have really large amounts of even good food grade kava. But that's only temporary. So anything else that causes that you have trouble processing is, GI wise, you may want to, take it slow on that until you adapt. But there's no known notable safety, contraindication with any other adaptogenic herb, especially.
And then he also asks, isn't it true that kava aids in fat burning as well? Have you heard that?
Oh, of course. Yeah. That's actually a really good question. I maybe he had heard some of our other interviews because I honestly haven't heard anybody else talk about that. And it was something that I think is incredibly important. That's kind of been overlooked, not by, scientists that have studied it, but anyone who is basically, reported on, even some scientists that have studied it. But which, a lot of that is basically, making connections in the scientific literature of what's been discovered, because kava's been thoroughly studied. It's one of the most well-studied herbs in the world outside of cannabis and ginseng and reishi mushroom. But anyways, we touched on this a little bit last time, but a lot of the excitement in the ethnobotanical and scientific community around kava is not even as much about its anxiolytic effects, although that's like number 2 or 3 in the scientific community. One of the most exciting areas of research is on its anti-mutagenic and cancer preventative, effects potentially. And how that's related to the fat burning thing is because it's the same pathway that's been identified that helps the body recycle bad cells, that helps the body, break down and recycle stored energy in the form of fat into fuel as well too, right? And it's this same pathway that's activated during fasting for people called AMP kinase or AMPK,
Right.
the adenosine monophosphate activated protein kinase pathway. And that's a mouthful, but basically what that is that's activated anytime you fast, anytime you're in a ketogenic diet. Basically, it's activated when your body is put into an emergency state where it needs to burn its own tissues for survival as energy. And that includes stored body fat, but it also includes bad cells. The body wants to burn up the bad stuff and use that as fuel because then it gets the best of both worlds. It recycles the bad stuff into usable energy as fuel, and it gets rid of the bad stuff. So that includes the accumulated zombie cells, the senescent cells, the cells that aren't really doing anything that need to be excreted, but the body never has time to break them down if it's always taken out of its recycle mode and into its renewal and repair and growth mode, which is a path that's governed by mTOR. So KAVA has mechanisms where it temporarily suppresses mTOR in high dosages. One of the kavalactones, yangonin, does that, but activates this AMP kinase pathway, and helps with fat burning and raises ketone levels and stuff.
So it sounds like KAVA is good to take when you're fasting to amplify your fast.
100%. It's actually, that was one thing that I kind of came across, before I even came across the scientific literature there, those studies, or some of the initial work that had been done that established those mechanisms. I was horribly sick. I kind of shared that in the last episode for years. And I was so metabolically broken that part of, one of the, the core strategies of rehabilitating my system with all the biohacks, with all the supplements and different things like that was just, a core dietary approach to regenerating my metabolism. And a lot of that was becoming, teaching my body feast famine cycles, how to become fat adapted, right? Going into states where I'm fasting to get rid of some of those bad cells. Or for a while, I could not fast at all because my body was such in this sort of fermentative sort of, sugar burning mode because it was so sick. It didn't have the hormonal ability to burn fat for fuel very easily. And so I was really trying with my functional medicine physician at the time to fast and to get into ketosis, but it was so hard. I mean, my body would shut down. I would get crazy anxiety. I couldn't sleep, the whole thing.
Right.
And so when I started taking KAVA for my convulsions and reactions, a secondary effect, I noticed that I could go much longer periods of time without getting hungry or needing any form of carbohydrates. And I was like, it was a noticeable difference. It was like, I got a little bit of that sometimes from coffee, but I wasn't drinking coffee anymore because it messed me up and it gave me anxiety and everything as well. But with KAVA, I was able to adapt, and basically it was a huge leverage tool for me that really got me over the hump and being able to get into ketosis and train my body to burn fat for energy and feel good while doing it, right? Because it makes fasting a lot easier because it reduces the cortisol and the anxiety that a lot of people get, from, going from sugar burning to fat burning. It gives the body a spike of dopamine without having to put carbohydrates in there, right? So it kind of satisfies the brain, and it raises ketone levels, lowers glucose. So it just makes the process easier.
And then that means it lowers insulin because ketones lower insulin.
Yes. Yeah.
And they make tissue more insulin sensitive. Dr. Dominic D'Agostino came on my show numerous times over the years. And one time he came on and he talked about actually using insulin to drive his blood sugar down to very dangerous levels while taking ketone esters.
Mm-hmm.
And he was able to get his blood sugar down in the 40s, which most people would go into some sort of a coma at that level. But he felt fine because the ketones were not just being used as fuel, but they were also improving overall insulin sensitivity in all tissue. And in fact, he mentioned on my show that day that he doesn't understand why when a diabetic is brought to the hospital in a near diabetic coma, why they give them glucose, which they have a hard time metabolizing and assimilating anyway because they're so insulin resistant. Why they don't give them ketones? And to this day, if you're a type 1 or type 2 diabetic and you're taken to the hospital and your blood sugar levels are tanking, the idea of giving you more sugar to save you is ridiculous because it takes a long time for the sugar to actually start having an effect, where the ketone esters have an effect immediately, and they could you could really rescue somebody who's deep into a diabetic coma with ketones instead of glucose.
Oh, yeah, 100%. It's just something that hasn't really, just like a lot of these things. In most of these conversations, it takes, I've had that same conversation with Dominic before actually too, or a similar one. It takes years, usually decades, sometimes 1 to 3 decades for cutting edge information that's well accepted in the scientific community to penetrate into standard clinical practice or even the hospital setting.
Right.
Because it's just, they're two separate worlds. A lot of people have this assumption that they go to their doctor and they're going to a scientist. Nothing could be farther from the truth in most cases. Usually they're going to a mechanic, right? They're going to someone who's told a protocol and they follow that protocol without question by the medical establishment, the procedures of that system. And they're acting as the mechanics. They're not designing the engines of the car, right? They're not, they don't know their way how to build it.
They don't have an understanding of the body.
Yeah. They couldn't even tell you. They just know it's like, they type in a symptom into their computer and they're told basically what the standard procedure is.
What drug to prescribe. What drug. Yeah. In fact, they're told what drug to prescribe. They're not told how to fix it, right? Yeah. Like if you're type 2 diabetic, really the way to fix it is to change eating protocol, fix sleep, and become more active. And in 6 months, your type 2 diabetes goes away. That's not what your doctor says. Your doctor says, here, take metformin.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's, and this is a whole nother discussion, but basically it's doctors aren't really allowed to doctor today, right? Back, decades ago, doctors used to be more of, they used to have a lot more flexibility as, investigative, students of medicine, basically, right? Where they were given the principles and they were taught how to think more than what to think. And then they had the flexibility to investigate the root cause, to use deductive reasoning, to basically, encourage you to get a second and third opinion, to understand pathology, what the root cause of something was. But as medicine sort of evolved into sort of this massive, complex symptom management, industry, it just sort of devolved into, we train the physicians to stick to protocol, to follow procedure, to not deviate from procedure, they're basically taught what to think instead of how to think. And that's a huge problem. That's you have the world of functional medicine outside of that. That's a kind of an answer to that, where, physicians are saying, hey, wait, I think we're smart enough to where we can, really start to dig and understand pathology from information in the scientific community and become scientists again. So it's an important point.
I want to go ahead and just promote the product real quick here. I love this product. A True KAVA. I use those shots, the blue and white shots. I take one in the evening, about an hour or two before bed. And there's no doubt I can track my sleep and I can see it working. If you want to try it, there's a QR code up in front of you that you can scan now and save ridiculous 25% off. That's unheard of, by the way, by most supplement companies. shrnetwork.biz/TrueKava, TRUKAVA. Use the code SHR for 25% off your order today. And, I don't know how many times I've said this on the show, but if you love this show, if we've helped you over the years, then the way to pay us back is patronize the sponsors. I don't have any products I sell. This show isn't about trying to turn me into an expert. I'm just like everybody else in this audience, looking for a better path to a longer, healthier life. And if you patronize the sponsors, then you are repaying the show for whatever we've ever done for you over the past 16 years. Again, shrnetwork.biz/TrueKava, TRUKAVA. Use the code SHR for 25% off. Let's make sure we don't have any questions before we end. Oh, look at that. So Sean Watson says he subscribed and he really likes this stuff. So there you go. There's a customer testimonial right there. Cameron George, it's always great to have you on the show. I learned so much from you, and your level of dedication to understanding the science behind your product. Most companies, they look at a study or two, they copy some information from the abstract, and they go, okay, we're going to start selling this product. You know what I mean? They're really most companies like doctors. You know, the supplement industry isn't much different than the pharmaceutical industry. They have a one-size-fits-all approach. This supplement works for everybody. There's no individualized supplementation, and most of these companies don't really know anything. Maybe they have a formulator who comes up with a really great formula. They create a price point, and they go to market. I have great respect for your depth of knowledge about KAVA. And I would say that you are the patron saint of KAVA, in fact.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate that. Yeah. No, I mean, at the end of the day, and there's a lot of other people, great people in the industry that share the same sentiment, but all that I'm really interested in is what actually works. I'm interested in real solutions to real problems. And because the thing that propelled me into this line of work, into this world, was serious suffering and adversity and adversity, sorry, on in my own life and in many people's lives whom I spent many years while I was sick as well too, because I was immersed in a community of some of the sickest people you could imagine, from cancers to autoimmune diseases, etc. So I lived in the trenches for a long time, and so I was forced into this, and everything that I've learned has been out of desperation that then evolved into inspiration as I got better and the desperation went away. So that's what drives me, is I just want to know the truth, and I want to know why. I always want to know the why behind things too. I want to know where things come from. I'm not satisfied with just, a short truncated answer of this is the way it is because we say it is, or this is the, accepted school of thought. I want to know why people come to their conclusions, because if you peel back the layers of any onion, for any philosophy, either in medicine or science or any of these categories, you'll find that, there are a lot of, contributing factors to what generates schools of thought. And sometimes there's, there are places in which, things can be, dug a little deeper and improved as far as expanding the perspective. And, I always am interested in going by the objective data and seeing where that takes us outside of anybody's opinion. So it's important.
Thanks for being here today, and thank you for being a sponsor.
Oh, thanks so much, Carl. Appreciate it.
Okay, and we'll talk to you soon. And that is it for today. I have to travel this week. We have some older shows we're rerunning about beef. Some really, really great shows, in fact, that Natalie Kapitsky is assembling for you while I'm traveling. So I promise you'll have good things to listen to. Don't forget to share the show. You never know. You may help one person today by sharing this show. You just never know. Maybe they'll learn about KAVA and they'll start using it, and all of a sudden their lives will change. So please share the show, and we will be back to you soon. Thank you for being here today. Take care.